I never imagined I would be pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, but I have no one else to turn to. My wife just left me, taking our 2 children with her. As I write this, I'm sitting in our empty living room surrounded by the echoes of the life we built, and I know I have no one to blame but myself. It feels surreal that this is where we ended up. Just a week ago, we were eating dinner together as a family, or rather, they were eating while I was glued to my phone, answering one work email after another. Now the house is silent. The only thing keeping me company tonight is the guilt that's tearing me up inside. My hands are trembling as I type this. I keep replaying the moment she walked out. The look on her face, a mixture of hurt and disappointment, will haunt me for the rest of my life. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly, our kids standing behind her with confused, tear-streaked faces. "We're leaving." Then I watched, frozen, as my wife, the woman I've loved for 12 years, took our son and daughter and walked out the front door. That was 3 days ago. 3 days since I've seen my children's smiles or heard their laughter in these rooms. 3 days since my wife looked at me not with anger or sorrow, but with love. And I'm terrified that I might never get those things back. I want to explain how we got here, how I managed to break the heart of the person I care about most, and how I nearly destroyed my own family. If nothing else, maybe writing this out will stop the spiral of regret in my head. Maybe it will serve as a cautionary tale for someone out there. Because I had everything, and I let it slip away. When I first met my wife, I'll call her Sarah, not her real name, I felt like the luckiest man alive. She was vibrant, strong, and had this warmth that drew people in. I'm Mike, 39, and she's 37. We met in our mid-20s. We married a couple of years later, crazy in love and full of dreams. Fast forward a decade. We have 2 beautiful children, Ethan who's 10 and Olivia who's 6, and what looked like a picture-perfect life from the outside. Back then, if you had told me I would ever hurt Sarah, I would have sworn up and down that it was impossible. I loved her more than anything. We had our struggles like any couple, tight finances in the early years, learning to be new parents with a screaming baby at 3 a.m., but we always faced them as a team. Or at least we used to. A few years ago, I landed a better job in a mid-sized tech company. Felt like our luck was turning around. The pay raise meant Sarah could cut back her hours at work to spend more time with the kids, something she really wanted after Olivia was born. We finally could afford a nicer home in a decent neighborhood, the kind with good schools and a backyard for the kids to play in. I remember the day we moved in. Sarah and I sat on the empty living room floor among a maze of boxes, eating pizza with the kids. We were sweaty, exhausted, and deliriously happy. That night, we talked about how all the sacrifices had been worth it. The long hours, the penny pinching, the nights one of us was up soothing a crying baby while the other cleaned up the latest mess. Felt like we had made it to a better place. Those were the good days where even when we were tired, we were in it together. I realize now I took those moments for granted. I assumed we'd always be that strong couple who could get through anything. The change was so gradual that I didn't notice the cracks forming in our marriage until they'd widened into chasms. My new job that once felt like a blessing slowly turned into a curse of endless responsibilities. I started leaving home earlier and coming back later. At first, it was occasional late nights to meet deadlines. Sarah was understanding. She'd keep dinner warm for me and greet me with a tired smile when I finally dragged myself through the door. But occasional late nights turned into a regular thing. There was always another project, another emergency, another client call that just couldn't wait. I began missing family dinners more often than not. I'd still see the kids before their bedtime if I was lucky, but even then my mind was often elsewhere. I'd read Ethan and Olivia a quick bedtime story, but sometimes I rushed through the pages, my thoughts already on the email I hadn't answered or the meeting I had first thing in the morning. Sarah tried to talk to me about it a few times. She would gently say, "Mike, we miss you. I know you have to work, but maybe can we plan a weekend? Just us." I always agreed in principle, but then I'd let work consume me anyway. I told myself I was doing it for them, for our family's future. Wasn't I being a good provider? Wasn't that what a husband and father was supposed to do? If I'm honest, a part of me loved the validation at work, the pats on the back and feeling important, something I wasn't getting from folding laundry or helping with homework. I chased that praise, blind to how I was leaving my wife and kids behind. The real wake-up call that things were wrong came one night about a year ago. I had promised to make it to Ethan's championship soccer game. He had worked hard all season and was so excited for me to watch him play in the finals. That morning, I promised him I wouldn't miss it for the world. I meant it at the time. But that day at work, an important client threatened to walk away. My team and I scrambled into crisis mode to save the account. I stayed late, frantically trying to fix the issue. By the time I finally bolted from the office, it was well past 8 p.m. The game had started at 6. I had 20 missed calls and texts on my phone. Most were from Sarah. When I saw the time, a jolt of panic and shame shot through me. I raced to the soccer field, hoping maybe the game ran late or I could at least catch the end. When I arrived, the field was empty, the floodlights dark. I was too late. I drove home feeling like scum. Inside, Ethan was in his room with the door closed. He had refused to talk to me. Sarah was in the living room, and the look on her face. It wasn't angry, it was worse. It was defeated. "He waited for you," she said, voice trembling with emotion she was holding back. "All game. He kept looking over to see if you were there. He really believed you'd show up, Mike." I opened my mouth to unload my excuses. The work crisis, my phone on silent, but stopped myself. What could I possibly say? That I chose work over our son's big moment? That I broke a promise to our 10-year-old because some client mattered more in the moment? Nothing I could say would make it okay. I stammered out a string of apologies that felt woefully inadequate. Ethan wouldn't even come out of his room to see me. I ended up apologizing through his closed door, choking up as I told him how sorry I was. That night, I slept on the couch by choice. I told Sarah I thought it was best to give Ethan space. Truthfully, I couldn't face lying in our bed, feeling her disappointment radiating from her side. Staring at the dark ceiling, I kept thinking, how did I become this man? In my head, I vowed to do better, to never let something like that happen again. And for a while, I really did try. The thing about trying, it often fell apart as soon as the next work crisis hit. A few weeks after the soccer game incident, I found myself backsliding. I'd get home at a decent hour for a few days, be more present and attentive, and then something at work would blow up and I'd be right back where I started. It was like an endless cycle. I'd disappoint them, feel guilty, swear to change, then slip back into old habits. It wasn't just the long hours. I was also bringing my stress home. If the day went badly, I'd walk through the door already in a foul mood. Sarah would usually be in the kitchen finishing dinner or helping the kids with homework. I'd barely mumble a hello before gravitating to my phone or laptop to just finish one last thing. If one of the kids came running to me excited about something, I'd absent-mindedly respond, "Aha, that's great," without really hearing them. And sometimes, I hate to admit, I would snap over the smallest things. I remember one evening coming home to Olivia crying in the living room because she'd accidentally knocked over a bowl of popcorn and it spilled everywhere. She was 5, and scared that she'd be in trouble for making a mess. I was so tired and irritable that I raised my voice. "Olivia, look at this. Can't you be a little more careful?" I barked, immediately regretting it as her face crumpled. Sarah rushed in from the kitchen, scooping Olivia up and shooting me a glare that could freeze fire. "It's just popcorn, Mike," she snapped. "She's a child, accidents happen. Why are you yelling?" Instantly, I felt like the worst father on earth. I apologized and tried to help clean up, but Olivia was sobbing and clinging to her mom, too scared of me to let me comfort her. Seeing my little girl shrink away from me hit me like a punch to the gut. Ethan had come out of his room and stood in the doorway, protective of his sister. He didn't say anything to me, but the disappointment in his 10-year-old eyes spoke volumes. After we got the kids settled and calmed down that night, Sarah and I had a serious talk. She told me flat out that things couldn't keep going like this. My temper and absence were hurting the kids, and hurting her. "I feel like a single parent," she confessed through tears. "You're never really here, and when you are, it's like we're walking on eggshells." At first I got defensive. I remember raising my voice, saying something like, "I'm doing all of this for us. You think I like being stressed and exhausted all the time? I'm trying to provide for this family so we can have a good life." She didn't take the bait for a shouting match. She just shook her head, looking so tired. "What good is this good life if we're miserable, Mike? The kids barely see you. I barely see you. And when we do, all we do is fight. This isn't the life I wanted." Her words broke something in me. I broke down crying, right there at the kitchen table. I was just so overwhelmed by work, by guilt, by the fear that I was failing the people I loved most. Sarah's anger melted into concern, and she held me as I sobbed, which somehow made me feel even worse. I felt like I didn't deserve her kindness. We talked for hours that night, quietly so the kids wouldn't hear. I promised her I would change. We made a plan. I'd set boundaries at work, no more taking calls at dinner, no more missing important family events, and we even considered that I might talk to a therapist or that we'd do couples counseling. I meant every promise I made. And for a few weeks after that, things honestly improved. I came home for dinner most nights. We reinstated a weekly family movie night. I made a real effort to be patient and engaged. The kids, seeing me around more, warmed back up. Sarah was still on edge. I'm sure she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, but I could tell she had a bit of hope. But you can't fix a broken marriage with a couple of good weeks. I was treating the symptoms, not the disease. And the disease, my skewed priorities and inability to handle stress, was still there, lurking under the surface. The next test came when I got a chance at a promotion. It would mean more money, which I immediately rationalized as good for the family, but also more responsibility. I remember feeling a pit in my stomach when I told Sarah about it, because I already knew what she'd think. And I was right, she was not thrilled. "What would that mean for us?" she asked warily. I tried to downplay it. Maybe I'd have to travel a bit more at first, put in some extra hours, but it won't be forever. And the raise would help. We could finally start a college fund, or get that kitchen renovation you've wanted. She sighed and looked at me with those searching eyes. "I don't care about a new kitchen. I care about our family. I care about you." She reached over and took my hand, which sort of broke my heart because I knew I didn't deserve how loving she was being in that moment. "If you take this promotion, promise me we'll figure it out together. Promise me you won't disappear on us again." I squeezed her hand and promised, "I won't. We'll make it work." I truly believed that when I said it. And for a little while, I managed to juggle the new role without completely dropping the ball at home. Until I couldn't. The breaking point came about 6 months ago. I had stepped into the new role and was neck-deep in it. Despite my vows, the late nights returned. The stress doubled. I could see the disappointment in Sarah's eyes every time I came home late or answered work calls on a Saturday. We tried to stick to date nights once a month, something we'd agreed on during our post-breakdown talk. But I canceled 2 date nights in a row because of work emergencies. We didn't reschedule them. We started arguing more frequently and more fiercely. Small disagreements spiraled into full-blown fights. She'd say I wasn't around enough. I'd snap that I was doing my best and she didn't appreciate me. It was a miserable cycle that we seemed unable to break. The kids definitely sensed it. Ethan, now 11, spent more and more time holed up in his room with his headphones on. Sweet little Olivia would crawl into my lap whenever I was home and ask, "Daddy, are you and Mommy mad at each other?" Every time, I'd force a smile and lie, "No, baby, we're just talking. Everything's okay." But everything was not okay. Then came the night that shattered everything. And ironically, it started with a simple text message. I had been working late again, for the third night that week, preparing a critical presentation for a potential client. It was one of those make-or-break opportunities for our division, and I was the lead. My colleague Rachel, who had become a work friend over the past months, was helping with the project. In truth, I talked to Rachel more than I talked to my wife during that period. What started as just collaborating and commiserating about our demanding jobs gradually drifted into more personal territory. Jokes, casual chats about life. I never thought of it as anything inappropriate. She was married too, and we were just two stressed professionals blowing off steam. But in hindsight, I can see that I was sharing emotional intimacy with Rachel that I should have been sharing with Sarah. That fateful night, around 9 p.m., Sarah texted me, "Are you coming home soon? Please, Mike. We miss you." I felt a pang of guilt. I did intend to wrap up as soon as I could. But the work dragged on. I didn't respond immediately because I kept thinking I was almost done. By the time I finally finished the presentation, it was nearly 11:30 p.m. I sent Sarah a short text saying I was on my way, then packed up to leave. On my drive home, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my coworker. She complimented the presentation and told me to get home safe. I thanked her quickly. It was just a brief friendly exchange, but in that moment it felt easier to talk to her than to deal with the tension at home. What I didn't know was that, at home, Sarah's worry had turned into anger. My silence all evening had made her fear the worst, then feel completely abandoned when it became clear I'd chosen work over being home yet again. When I finally walked in close to midnight, Sarah was waiting, eyes red from tears. She was furious and hurt. I hadn't called all night. The kids had gone to bed heartbroken that I wasn't there again. We started arguing the moment I stepped inside. She yelled that she was tired of being an afterthought, of doing everything alone. I snapped back that I was working for us, that I couldn't just ignore a crucial deadline. That only made her angrier. She told me our marriage was falling apart, that she was miserable and felt like she'd lost me to my job. We were shouting, saying things we'd held in for years. Suddenly, she looked at me and said, "I also know about Rachel." Her voice trembled as she said it. "I checked the phone bill. You've been calling and texting her constantly." Felt like the floor dropped out from under me. "It's not what you think," I blurted out, panicking. "Rachel and I are just friends. I swear, I never." She cut me off, eyes flashing. "Whether you slept with her or not, do you get how much it hurts to see you confide in another woman instead of me? When things got hard, you chose to talk to her, not me. You shut me out, Mike." Tears were flowing down her cheeks now. "She gets your jokes, your worries, your time, and we get whatever's left of you, which lately is nothing." I was desperate now, reaching for her.
Sarah, I'm sorry.
"I was stupid. I thought I was sparing you my stress, but I was wrong. Please, I love you. I love the kids, She stepped back out of my reach, wiping her tears. That hurt more than if she'd slapped me. Her voice came out soft and broken. "I can't do this anymore, Mike. This house is full of your absence. I'm done trying to pretend we're okay. I'm done lying to the kids that you'll be here next time. I have to protect them. And myself." A wave of pure panic hit me. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you leaving me?" She took a shaky breath. "I'm taking the kids to my parents for a while. We need space. You need to figure out what you really want. If it's us, you have to prove it. I'm not filing for divorce tonight, but I'm not promising I won't if nothing changes." I broke down, right there in front of her. I begged, pleaded, "Please don't do this. Don't take the kids. I'll change, I swear to you. I'll cut back at work. I'll delete Rachel's number. I'll do anything. Just please, don't go. We can fix this. We can fix us." I was crying so hard I could barely speak, my entire body shaking. She was crying too, but her face was set with a resolve I'd never seen. "I've heard all that before," she said softly.
I'm sorry.
"I just can't believe it until I see it." At that moment, we heard soft sobs from the stairs. Our children had heard everything, and seeing their tear-streaked faces shattered us. We spent the next hour in a blur of tears and packing. Sarah called a taxi, and despite my desperate pleas and the kids crying for me, she left that night with them. I stood in the driveway, rain soaking my clothes, watching the taxi's tail lights disappear and feeling like my world was ending. The first night after my wife and kids left, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat on the living room couch, numb, listening to the awful silence. I kept hoping I'd wake up from this nightmare and find them all upstairs asleep in their beds. Come morning, reality hit hard. I tried calling Sarah's phone dozens of times that first day. She didn't answer. Eventually, she texted me, "Got to my parents safe. We're okay. Need time to think. Please give us space." I must have read that text 100 times, the finality of it sinking in a little more each time. She wasn't even angry in it, just distant. That frightened me more than anything. My initial impulse was to do something huge to prove to her I was serious about changing. Part of me wanted to hop in the car and drive straight to her parents' house to beg for forgiveness in person. But deep down, I knew barging in when she specifically asked for space would only make things worse. So, I forced myself to slow down and actually think about how to fix this. The very first concrete step I took was calling my boss that next morning and requesting an immediate leave of absence. I had years of unused vacation and sick time. I told him I had a family emergency. My voice broke on the phone. I think I said something like, "I might lose my family if I don't do this." He got the message. Work could survive without me for a while. My family could not. Next, I knew I had to cut out any distractions or influences that had contributed to this mess. I wrote an email to Rachel, my coworker friend. I kept it polite and brief. I explained that I needed to focus on repairing my marriage, so I would be out of touch for the foreseeable future. I thanked her for being a friend when I was struggling, but said I wouldn't be able to communicate one-on-one anymore outside of any absolute work necessity. After sending it, I deleted her contact info and blocked her on my phone. It hurt a bit. Not because I had romantic feelings. I didn't. But because I knew I had used her as a crutch and it was time to stand on my own, or rather, stand with my wife if I ever got the chance again. Sitting alone in that quiet house, I realized I had no idea what to actually do with myself if I wasn't working. And that was a huge part of the problem. I had let my career consume my entire identity. So, while I waited and hoped for Sarah to be willing to talk, I threw myself into another kind of work, fixing everything at home that I'd neglected. It was partly to show Sarah I was serious, but also to keep me from losing my mind with worry. I started by cleaning the house top to bottom, something I honestly hadn't done in, I don't even know how long. I washed dish after dish, did load after load of laundry. I organized the kids' playroom that was overflowing with toys I'd never found time to sort through. I tackled the garage, which had basically become a dumping ground over the years. In one corner, I uncovered Sarah's old bicycle under layers of dust and junk. She used to love going on weekend bike rides, back when we had weekends together. Seeing that bike, forgotten and neglected like our relationship, broke me down all over again. Everywhere I turned, I found little reminders of our life together. The crayon family portrait Ethan drew in kindergarten that was pinned under some work papers on my desk. A photo of us all at the beach 2 summers ago that had fallen behind the TV stand. A dried corsage from a wedding we attended years ago tucked in a drawer. Each discovery felt like a stab of nostalgia and regret. I realized how many moments I had been physically there for, but not really present. Nights were the hardest. The emptiness of the house was suffocating. I tried to sleep in our bed, but it felt all wrong without Sarah beside me. I ended up back on the living room couch with the TV on low for company, though I wasn't watching it. More often than not, I'd find one of Olivia's little stuffed animals or one of Ethan's action figures left behind, and I'd just hold it and sob like a baby. One evening, about a week into this separation, I got a call from Sarah's father. My heart leapt into my throat, hoping maybe it was Sarah using his phone, but it was just him. He kindly told me that they were all safe and that I needed to respect Sarah's need for space a bit longer. He wasn't harsh or accusatory. In fact, he sounded sympathetic. "She's hurting, Mike," he said gently. "I know you are too. She doesn't want to throw away your marriage if there's any chance to save it, but she needs to see real change." I ended up crying on the phone to my father-in-law, babbling about how I'd do anything, how I was already doing this and that. He listened quietly, then gave me advice I'll never forget. "Words are easy. Show her. Use this time to really show her what she means to you. And be patient." I thanked him through my tears and promised I wouldn't give up. That call was a turning point for me. It made me realize that I couldn't just say I'd change. I had to actually be that change, even if Sarah wasn't there to see it yet. I had to become a better man, whether or not I immediately got the reward of my family back. Around that time, I also started seeing a therapist. True to my word, I had looked one up the day after Sarah left and managed to get an appointment within a week. In our first session, I unloaded everything about how work had taken over my life, how I'd lost balance, how I failed my wife and kids, how I panicked and turned to a coworker for comfort instead of addressing issues at home. Saying it all out loud to a stranger was oddly cathartic and also deeply uncomfortable. But it started the process of really examining myself. In therapy, I began to understand the deeper reasons behind my behavior. I realized I had been using work as an escape. At work, I felt competent, appreciated, in control. At home, I often felt out of my depth or afraid of failing. Like when the kids cried and I didn't know how to help, or when Sarah was upset and I didn't have a fix. Instead of facing that discomfort, I subconsciously buried myself in the one area where I knew I could succeed: my job. Understanding this didn't excuse what I did, but it helped me see that I had to stop treating my family like a second priority or I would truly lose them. Meanwhile, I kept communication with Sarah very low-key. I'd send a short text each day, not to harass her, just to say I was thinking of them, or a quick update like, "I had a good session with the therapist today," or "Made Ethan's favorite spaghetti recipe tonight. Thinking of you guys." She rarely replied, and if she did, it was brief. But I knew from her parents that she hadn't gone to a lawyer yet, so I clung to that. After about 3 weeks of near silence, I got a surprise. Sarah agreed to let me spend a day with the kids. She suggested that I pick them up from her parents' house on a Saturday morning and take them out, then bring them back by evening. I was so grateful I could have kissed her, or rather my phone. I immediately started planning something fun but also low pressure so the kids could just enjoy. When I arrived at her parents' house to pick up the kids, I was both excited and unbearably nervous. Olivia came running out to me the second I stepped out of the car, launching herself into my arms. "Daddy!" she squealed, clinging to my neck. I felt a huge lump in my throat as I hugged her tight. Ethan hung back at the door, trying to play it cool, but when I knelt down and said, "Hey, bud, I missed you," he came forward and gave me a quick, awkward hug. "Missed you too," he mumbled, not making eye contact. Sarah was on the porch watching. We caught eyes for a second. I gave her a small, respectful nod. I didn't know what to say or whether she even wanted me to say anything. "Thank you for letting me have them today," I managed. She nodded back. "Have fun, you guys," she told the kids, kissing each of them on the head, and then to me just, "Bye." It wasn't warm, but it wasn't angry either. It was progress. I took the kids out, first to their favorite park, then to an afternoon showing of a new animated movie, doing everything I could to make them smile. Watching them chase each other on the playground and laugh at silly parts of the movie, I felt happiness and relief that I hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't all easy, though. Kids are perceptive, and I knew they had questions. Over a picnic lunch at the park, Ethan finally voiced it. "Dad, are you and Mom gonna get divorced?" he asked, trying to sound offhand but failing. Olivia, who was nibbling on a sandwich next to me, froze and looked up at me with big worried eyes. I took a deep breath, swallowing the surge of guilt and sorrow that question provoked. I wanted to assure them no, of course not, we'd never divorce. But I didn't want to lie or make promises I couldn't be sure of. Instead I said, "I'm working really hard so that doesn't happen. Your mom and I are trying to fix some grown-up problems. I hope you can forgive me for the ways I messed up." My voice was shaking. "But whatever happens, I need you both to know none of this is your fault. We both love you so much. That will never change. Okay?" Olivia crawled into my lap and started crying. "I want you and Mommy to stay together," she sobbed. I held her and glanced at Ethan, who was blinking fast, trying to hide his tears. "I know, Livy," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "I want that too, more than anything." I reached out and squeezed Ethan's hand across the picnic table. "I'm not giving up, guys. Promise. I'm going to do everything I can to make Mom happy again and be the dad you deserve." Ethan looked down, his voice small. "Mom's really sad," he said. "At night I hear her cry. I hate it, Dad." That nearly broke me right there. I gently pulled him into a hug too, and both my kids clung to me. "I'm so sorry," I choked out. "I'm sorry I made Mom sad. I'm sorry I made you sad. I'm going to fix it. It's going to take time, but I will fix it." We sat there for a while, just holding each other. It was the most emotionally raw moment I'd ever had with my children. Eventually, their tears subsided. Kids being kids, within an hour their spirits bounced back when I took them for ice cream and we started joking about brain freeze. But the conversation stuck with me, fueling my determination to make things right. When I brought them back to my in-laws' house that evening, Sarah actually invited me in for a few minutes. I suspect the kids had told her about our talk because her eyes were red like she'd been crying again, but she tried to smile. We all sat in the living room with her parents while the kids excitedly recapped the movie's plot, with lots of excited interruptions from Olivia. It felt almost normal, except I was hyper-aware of where I sat, across the room from Sarah, and we barely spoke directly to each other. As I got up to leave, I mustered the courage to say quietly to Sarah, "Could we maybe talk sometime soon? Just us." She hesitated, then nodded slightly. Maybe in a few days. I'll let you know." It wasn't a yes but definitely, but it wasn't a no. I take it. "Okay, whenever you're ready. I'll be here," I said. "And thank you for today." She just responded, "Good night, Mike." But there was a gentleness to it that gave me hope. That night I actually slept a bit, for the first time in a long time, with my phone on the pillow beside me in case she texted. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I still had a chance. A few days later, true to her word, Sarah agreed to talk. We met at a quiet coffee shop one evening. I was there 20 minutes early, hands shaking around the cup of tea I'd ordered. Coffee would have just worsened my anxiety. When she walked in, my heart nearly stopped. She looked as beautiful and strong as ever, but there was a guardedness in her expression that drove home how much damage I'd done. I stood up when she approached, unsure if I should hug her. I ended up just giving a nervous, "Hi." She gave me a small nod and sat down, fiddling with her wedding ring. I noted with relief she was still wearing it. There was an awkward silence at first. Finally, I just dove in. I told her everything I'd been doing. Taking leave from work, going to therapy, cutting off contact with Rachel, and most importantly, I told her everything I'd come to realize about myself. I admitted how I had used work and even that friendship as an escape, how I had taken her and the kids for granted. I owned up to every hurt I knew I'd caused. I apologized more sincerely and thoroughly than I ever have in my life. Sarah listened quietly, her eyes moist but unreadable. Then she cleared her throat and spoke. She told me how much I'd hurt her, how lonely she had felt for so long, how every time I broke a promise to the kids, It broke her heart a little more. She told me she had been close to falling out of love with me because the man I'd become wasn't the man she married. Hearing her say that was like a knife to the gut, but I needed to hear it. We talked for hours, until the coffee shop was closing and we had to leave. It was painfully honest and hard for both of us, but it felt like lancing a wound. The poison had to come out before healing could begin. By the end of that night, we hadn't come to any concrete resolution, but we parted on a hug.
A real, mutual look.
I can't even describe the relief I felt just holding her for those few seconds. In the weeks that followed, Sarah agreed to go to couples counseling with me. I continued my individual therapy as well, and she started seeing a therapist on her own too, to process her feelings and make sure reconciliation was truly what she wanted. Our couples counselor had us lay everything on the table. There were sessions where she cried, sessions where I cried, sessions where we both just sat there in painful silence. But gradually, session by session, we started communicating in a healthier way. We reminisced too. The counselor had us recall positive memories like how we met. I made a corny joke at a mutual friend's party that made her laugh. Our wedding day, when I bawled happy tears at the altar. The day Ethan was born, I fainted in the delivery room, to her lasting amusement. We laughed about those memories, and it reminded us that our story wasn't just fights and tears. It was also years of love, friendship, and teamwork. We also established new ground rules and boundaries. I vowed that work would never take priority over family again. Practically, that meant no more checking emails at the dinner table, no more saying yes to every request from my boss at the expense of family plans. I actually ended up stepping down from the management role I'd been promoted to. I told my job I'd rather take a less demanding position than destroy my family. It was humbling, and some colleagues thought I was crazy to turn down a higher title and pay, but I did not care one bit. Sarah didn't ask me to do that, but I wanted to. Even if we hadn't reconciled, I knew I needed to do that for myself and for my kids. Fortunately, my company understood. I think they'd rather keep me in a lesser role than lose me entirely. And frankly, I'm performing better now than I have in years, because I'm not constantly burnt out or guilty. As part of our reconciliation, we slowly began to spend more time together as a family again. At first, it was brief visits. I'd come over to her parents' house to have dinner with everyone on a Sunday, for example. Those dinners started off awkward but grew more relaxed as hope returned. My in-laws have been incredibly supportive, and I'll never forget their kindness through all this. One night after the kids were asleep at their grandparents', Sarah and I stayed up late just talking on the back porch. It felt like we were dating again, that mix of nervousness and excitement. She told me, haltingly, that she could see I was truly changing, but that she was still afraid I'd slip back, afraid to trust it. I told her that was okay, that I understood, and that I was in this for the long haul. I meant it. About 3 months after that terrible night when they left, we decided it was time for us all to come home. I'll never forget the look on Ethan's face when I carried the suitcases back into our house, or the way Olivia literally jumped up and down squealing, "We're home! We're home!" We made that first night back special. We ordered pizza, spread a picnic blanket on the living room floor, and had an indoor picnic while watching a Disney movie together. All 4 of us snuggled on the couch, the kids in the middle covering us with their favorite blankets. After we got them to bed, and trust me, they fought sleep because they were afraid things might change again if they woke up. Sarah and I ended up sitting together on that same couch, exhausted but happy. She leaned against me and, for the first time in forever, I felt her relax. She fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I didn't move for over an hour. I just stayed there, listening to her breathe and thanking whatever powers that be for this second chance. I know that our work isn't done just because we're under the same roof again. In fact, we've agreed to keep going to counseling for a while to make sure we don't slide back into old habits. There are still moments when old triggers pop up, like the first time my phone rang with a work call during dinner after she returned. I saw Sarah tense up, eyes on me, probably wondering if I'd answer. I sent it to voicemail and turned my phone off without a second thought, then reached over and squeezed her hand. No words, but she got the message. Nothing is more important than you all. She smiled, and we went back to eating with the kids chattering away about Minecraft or whatever. Little by little, I'm earning back her trust. Life isn't magically perfect now. We still have disagreements and off days. But the difference is I'm present now, really present. I listen. I engage. If something's bothering either of us, we talk about it, even if it's uncomfortable, instead of letting it fester. I've reconnected with my kids in ways that I hadn't even realized I was missing. I help Ethan with his homework every night now. We've even started reading the same book series so we can discuss it. Olivia insists on a daddy-daughter dance in the living room every few days, which has become my favorite new ritual. She stands on my feet and we sway to whatever song she picks. I'm soaking up these moments, making up for lost time. Sarah and I have also reintroduced regular date nights. Sometimes it's just takeout and a movie at home after the kids are asleep. Sometimes her sister will babysit so we can go for a walk or a drive together. We talk, we laugh, we dream about the future. A future that, thankfully, we're still planning together. Sitting here reflecting on all that's happened, I am filled with gratitude and humility. I came this close to losing my family because of my own mistakes. Not everyone in my situation gets a second chance. I'm determined never to waste it. If there's one overarching lesson I've gained, it's this: love isn't just a feeling. It's an action and a choice you make every single day. I used to say I loved my wife and kids, and I did, but I wasn't actively showing it. Love needs nurturing and presence. Part of that love is communication. I thought I was protecting Sarah by keeping my stress to myself, but all I did was shut her out and make her feel unloved. I learned that if you're struggling, you have to talk to your partner, even when it's hard or you're afraid. Lean on them, listen to them, and work through the tough stuff together. That's what a real partnership is. Another lesson is about balance and priorities. Ambition and providing are fine, but there's a point where a good thing becomes toxic. I crossed that line. I was working to build a life for us, but what was the point if I wasn't actually living and enjoying that life with them? Success means nothing if the people you love feel abandoned. I had to learn that the hard way. And if anyone reading this sees a bit of themselves in me, please, don't wait until you hit rock bottom to wake up. Don't be the dad who misses the soccer games or the mom who's too busy to tuck the kids in. This problem isn't exclusive to husbands. Don't be the spouse who doesn't realize what they have until it's walking out the door. If your loved ones are telling you they feel neglected or if you sense distance growing, address it now. Nothing, no promotion, no project, no amount of money is worth sacrificing your family and your happiness. I'm beyond lucky that Sarah was willing to give us another chance, and that my kids are young enough that hopefully these tough times will become a distant memory. Not everyone gets that. Some people realize too late and the damage is irreversible. Every day now, I make the conscious choice to put my family first. Every morning, I remind myself to be the husband and father they deserve. I still work in tech. I still have a boss and deadlines and the occasional stressful day. But I've learned to draw lines. I go in earlier if I need to so I can be home by dinner. I've learned to say no at work when it infringes on family time, something I never used to do. And funny enough, the world didn't end. I'm still doing fine in my career. We started a new tradition. Sunday is family day. Non negotiable. No work, no distractions. Sometimes we go out for a hike or to visit a museum. Other times we stay in and play board games in our pajamas. This past Sunday, we baked cookies and had a silly dance party in the kitchen. I looked around at one point, flour all over, Olivia giggling as she stuck dough to her nose, Ethan pretending not to enjoy dancing but totally enjoying it, Sarah laughing with a sparkle in her I hadn't seen in a long time, and I just felt overwhelmingly grateful. I came so close to throwing this all away. I will never, ever let that happen again. If you made it this far, thank you for reading my story. It's not easy laying out your failures for the world to see, but I needed to get this off my chest. Maybe it will help someone out there avoid the mistakes I made. Hold your family close. Show up for them. Every single day. I was a workaholic husband who neglected my wife and kids and took them for granted. I let stress and pride drive a wedge into my marriage, leaned on a female coworker for emotional support instead of my wife, and ignored countless warning signs. My wife reached her breaking point and left with our kids, forcing me to confront what I had become. Through therapy, self-reflection, and a lot of effort, I fought to win my family back. We're rebuilding our marriage now with better communication, boundaries, and appreciation. I almost lost everything that truly mattered, and I've learned the hard way to never take my family for granted again.